house smells of cornbread, fried potatoes, and silence. Not the kind that crushes your ears, but the kind where two men, father and grown son, live easily side by side. We talk little, the way men often do, but we understand each other without fuss. No doors slam here anymore. No dishes fly against the walls. No woman's laugh drifts down the hallway. No little feet pound up the stairs. Only an old FM radio in the kitchen murmurs classic country tunes and the morning news from KQRS. That's how an ordinary weekday begins. While the coffee maker sputters, I, an aging man to whom life has handed both love and pain, let myself remember, sometimes you have to just to stay sane. I divorced back in 2014. A deployment to Afghanistan, routine for career guard soldiers like me. Camo, checkpoints, guys who ask no unnecessary questions. I flew home early, Saturday instead of Monday, because paperwork cleared faster than expected. Dawn, quiet stairwell. The familiar scent of the Minneapolis apartment building. My key turned, I stepped inside. Wrong size sneakers at the door, a stranger's jeans over the armchair, and then oil on canvas. My wife tangled in someone else's arms. Bed sheets in knots, her wide-eyed fear, his cocky half grin. I couldn't forgive. It wasn't pride. Something inside simply snapped like a blade driven in and left to rust. I sold my pickup, hired an attorney. The custody fight was brutal, but I won. My son, 10, stood beside me without a word. My daughter, 6, clung to my hand as if it were a life raft. We managed, no whining, no self-pity. I worked swing shifts at the rail yard. They went to school. The house in St. Paul wasn't fancy, but it was ours. 5 bedrooms, warm in winter. Floors I'd laid myself, yard toys bought bit by bit. We held on. Then came 2019, a buddy's birthday cookout out in Stillwater. Brisket, light beer, old friends. She was there. Leah, large brown eyes, shy smile. Flinched at sharp laughs, winced when someone slammed a cooler lid. Later a friend whispered, her husband's a bully. Tracks everything she does, explodes when he drinks, smacks her and the kids. 2 girls, 4 and 11. We texted after that. Nothing heavy, stickers, check-ins, goodnight notes. Half a year passed. Then, could we talk? We sat in my truck outside her duplex. She spoke fast, half whispering, scared the neighbors might hear. I, a man who'd stopped believing in second chances, felt something thaw beneath old winter ice. I asked my kids, now 17 and 12. They traded glances. Dad, if she's kind and her girls are safe with us, bring them. I drove over, alone. Expected a brute. Met a scrawny 5'5" drunk with a cigarette and a sneer. Words failed, fists followed. I'm not proud, yet I'd do the same. We packed Leah's things, buckled her daughters in, headed home. A new life started. Her girls accepted me instantly. Mine were cautious at first, then the 4 blended like cousins at a long reunion. Mornings were a blur. Elementary school, middle school, my son's community college, my graveyard shift. Leah cleaned, cooked, laughed again. Evenings, the big oak table buzzed with voices. It felt unreal, peaceful. We married. 30 days between her divorce decree and our courthouse vows. Nearly a year of calm. Then, it unraveled. Her youngest let it slip. Mom sees the other guy when you're at work. I doubted, then checked. Truth hurts fast. I sent all 4 kids to Valleyfair for the day. Rides, funnel cakes, prepaid wristbands. Then sat across from Leah at the dining table. Quiet, no shouting. Why? She sighed. Everything's fine here, maybe too fine. You don't yell, you don't hit, you barely drink, there's no music blaring. The house feels like a clinic. With him, it's crazy, alive. He swears he's changed, won't lay a hand on me again. And well, the sex is wild. The floor seemed to tilt. Anger never flared, only emptiness. I grabbed a duffel, drove 3 nights on overtime, slept in the crew cab. Came back, she was gone. House key hooked neatly on the dog's leash. Goodbye. 3 days later, she returned for a box from the closet. Stood in the doorway, hair covering her face. I saw the bruise. Purple, swollen, ugly. Felt nothing. No pity, no rage, just hollow. A year I patched myself up. Work helped. Steel tools occupy restless hands. One evening that same buddy said, "Quit rescuing folks who live in mud. Some need it like air, prov bile. Now it's just me and my son." He's 21, works IT, lifts weights. My daughter married last fall, moved to Denver. Her husband's a vascular surgeon. They're fine. Nights my boy and I sit quietly, sometimes chess, sometimes ribs on the smoker. He laughs when I crash at 9, I grumble when he stumbles in at midnight, and the house is silent. True silence, the kind that says, "It's over, keep walking. You made it, you're alive." Mornings always start the same. Cinnamon coffee in a travel mug, a half-awake drive on autopilot, out of the driveway, onto the loop, into the downtown parking garage. Lights on in the office, a few clicks, and the screen fills with spreadsheets, emails to DOS. I'm 38, old enough to not chase approval, young enough to still feel every heartbeat. Middle management, not an executive, but not some guy fetching coffee either. My team respects me, my boss leaves me be. I look the part, pressed shirt, clean haircut, polished shoes, a quiet wristwatch. I know how to listen without interrupting, how to crack the right joke at the right time. I don't preach, I don't overshare. I'm married. Not perfectly, but married. 15 years now. My wife, she's like that old playlist you keep in your car. You know every note, every lyric, even the ones that annoy you. There are things that still make me respect her. There are things that drive me crazy. Sometimes it's warm, sometimes it's distant. Sometimes we don't speak for a day, then argue, then suddenly laugh at something dumb in the kitchen. That's marriage. Real marriage. No Instagram gloss, just two people with a shared world, kids, a home, a past. You don't just drag and drop that into the trash. And in this world, there's me, a guy who hears people whisper behind his back, "You, still faithful? Why? You're a good-looking guy, successful. What's the deal?" They say I could have a line out the door. Women smile, flirt, sometimes linger in conversation a little too long, but no one ever crosses the line, and I don't invite them to. One of the women in my department is Rachel. She's 30, sharp, heels every day, always has a comment that makes the room laugh. The office lights up around her. Sometimes she jokes with a twist, sometimes she bends just a little lower for a folder. If I were 25, I probably would have fallen. Now, I just smile back. The other day she said, "You're always so decent. Guys like you don't exist." I shrugged. They do. You're just not looking in the right places. My coworker Kevin has that permanent smirk. Come on, man. Every guy's got issues at home. You fix that stuff on the side. That's how it works. He doesn't know I've got issues too. Evenings where my wife and I sit across from each other and the kitchen table feels like the Atlantic Ocean, where everything about me seems to irritate her. The way I chew, the way I scroll, the way I breathe. And her? She drives me up the wall with the way she clicks the remote, the way she says figures under her breath, the way her eyes roll like it's a tick. But I don't leave. I don't go looking for a second act for my soul. You know why? Because cheating isn't about sex. It's about betrayal. It's knowing you're walking out the door planning to lie. It's the moment your gaze changes, when your thoughts are no longer where they should be. One night becomes a snowball, and suddenly you're standing in the hallway, eyes to the floor, saying, "I didn't mean to. I don't know how it happened. But I know. You always know." It's easy to blame the other person when a marriage starts unraveling. She's cold. She's tired. She doesn't notice me. She doesn't inspire me. But let's be honest, I'm no saint either. I'm not always kind, not always patient, not always the first to say sorry. I've got my flaws. I just believe that if you said I'm in, then stay in, or leave like a man. But sneaking around? That's not about passion, that's about weakness. Tonight we're at the kitchen table. Her eyes look heavy. I sip tea. The TV mumbles in the background, no one really watching. "You stayed late again?" she asks. "Work?" She nods. Then quietly, "Are we okay?" I pause, weigh my words. I don't want to lie. It's not always easy. But I'm here. On purpose. She doesn't say thank you, just looks at me, then stands, goes to the cabinet, and brings out those chocolate chip cookies I like. The ones she only buys when she remembers. We eat in silence. But it's something. It's still something. Sometimes people say, you just haven't met the right temptation yet. Maybe. Or maybe I've just learned to say no to myself before I start saying yes to trouble. And if you're reading this, looking for a way to justify your own affair, don't blame it on her, or him, or life. That's all you. When you want out, you look for excuses. When you want to stay, you look for ways. I'm just here, living. No drama, no side stories. And somehow that quiet loyalty feels like strength, maybe even love. It happened on one of those Saturdays where you plan to be out for just a couple of hours, but somehow you end up getting home late, exhausted, hungry, and with no clear idea of where the day even went. I was trying to find a warehouse. A buddy had asked me to swing by and check out some leftover materials that might be useful for a cabin project. He texted the location and said, "It's simple, you won't get lost." Sure thing. I left after lunch, punched the address into Google Maps, and everything seemed fine until I got into the industrial zone. You know the type. Big gray buildings, cracked asphalt lots, weird side roads, and zero signs on anything. And then the GPS just lost its mind. Started looping me around, sending me down dead ends, pointing me toward random abandoned loading docks. I tried restarting the route, turning around. Nothing helped. I called my friend. No answer. Finally, I gave up and decided to head back toward the highway and just go home. By the time I got out of that maze, the sun was setting. I got home completely drained, like I'd spent the day hauling bricks instead of driving. The house was quiet. My wife was in the kitchen. The kids were at their grandma's. I tossed my jacket over a chair and collapsed onto the couch. I had just started to stretch out when my phone buzzed from the windowsill. My wife was passing by, so I asked without thinking, "Hey, Sarah, can you check who that is?" I'm too tired to get up. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and then pause. I didn't notice it at first, just silence. Then she looked up and very calmly, almost flatly, read aloud, "Tell us about your experience at Ocean Breeze Spa." That's when I realized the day wasn't quite over yet. "What's that?" she asked, same calm tone. But I knew that tone. That tone's more dangerous than yelling. What spa?" I said, sitting up as if I could hear better from a different position. She silently turned the screen toward me. It was a notification from Google, a request to leave a review. Ocean Breeze Spa. Of course. Looked like I'd spent the afternoon relaxing at a day spa instead of chasing scrap wood across a junkyard. I started explaining. It had to be a mistake. I told her I'd been lost in the industrial district, that the GPS probably logged my location, and maybe this spa was just next to the warehouse I'd been circling. I hadn't even seen a spa. Just fences, concrete, pipes. Who puts a spa there? But the more I explained, the dumber it all sounded. I mean, seriously, I was in the middle of nowhere looking for a warehouse, and somehow a spa was next door, and my phone thought I went in? I didn't even believe it myself. She just stared at me, and that silence was worse than any argument. "So you went to a spa?" she finally asked. "No, I didn't even see the place. You know me." "Well," she said, turning back toward the kitchen, "now I'm not so sure." And off she went, with my phone. I just sat there in the hallway, half out of my jacket, still wearing my shoes, feeling this weird guilt, like I had snuck off to steam and sip beer while she was home making dinner. We barely talked that evening. Dinner was quiet and cold, and I slept on the couch. The next day, I went full detective mode, dug up the address, cross-checked it on maps, zoomed in on the satellite view. Sure enough, the spa was literally next door to that warehouse. Like, wall to wall. Took screenshots, printed them out like some kind of courtroom exhibit, and showed her. She looked, sighed, and just said, "Still weird how these kinds of coincidences only ever happen to you." So yeah, good luck trusting GPS after that.
California's sun burned into my shoulders, and the air carried the tang of salt water, the sweet scent of sunscreen, and the distant laughter of beachgoers. A gentle tune played near the infinity pool, something light and tropical, with a pop beat underneath. This was not the kind of resort you stumble upon by accident. 5-star luxury, a seafood buffet, waiters dressed in crisp white uniforms, and pristine cleanliness. A place where you escape not only the daily grind, but yourself. I'd been lounging by the pool for days, sipping cold craft beer and worrying about nothing except not getting sunburned before I had to fly home. It was somewhere between my third and fourth pint when I noticed them by the edge of the water. She was blonde, maybe 35, possibly older. Tall, with a well-maintained figure. Clearly someone who took care of herself. Her face had soft features, very all-American, slightly weary but glowing with happiness. He was lean and tanned, with a short beard and dark sunglasses. His eyes, though obscured, seemed intense. When he looked at her, there was so much tenderness that, even as a lifelong cynic, I felt a pang somewhere inside. They laughed, splashed in the water, and talked in a mix of accented English and something else I couldn't place. She kissed his cheek. He held her by the waist. At some point, I found myself close enough to strike up a conversation, because that's what happens on vacations. "Are you two together?" I asked, without malice or ulterior motives, just out of curiosity. She laughed. "Yes," she said. "We meet here every year, 6 years in a row now." He nodded, adding with an accent, "She is my love, only one, my beloved." I raised an eyebrow and smiled. California's sun, summer, romance, it all fit into a story as cliched as it was warm. "Where do you live?" I asked. "I'm from Michigan," she said. "He lives here in San Diego. He works at the marina, sometimes does boat tours. And me, I don't work? You don't work? And who pays for all this?" I gestured around at the lavish resort. "It's not cheap, you know?" She looked at me calmly, almost defiantly. "My husband, your husband?" I nearly choked on my beer. "So you're married?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I have a son. He's 11. My husband is a good man, hardworking, supportive. We've been together a long time. But," she glanced at the man next to her, "I love him. My Turk." He smiled at her but didn't follow every word. She leaned in and kissed him briefly. I was stunned. A husband, a son, and annual trips to another man across the country? Not for a day or two, but for a whole week, every year for 6 years straight? "Does he know?" I asked finally. "My husband?" She smirked. "No, of course not. He thinks I'm on a girl's trip. Says I deserve it." The Turk watched her with such adoration that it felt as if the world around him disappeared whenever she was near. He couldn't catch all of our conversation, but he understood enough from her tone. He took her hand and pressed it against his chest. She kissed him on the lips. I stepped away, not out of morality, but because the air felt tight, claustrophobic. Not from judgment, but from the sheer weight of it all. Somewhere in Michigan, there's a man who has no idea his wife flies off to San Diego each year to be with someone else. He might be at home making breakfast for their son, completely oblivious that his wife is wrapped in another man's arms by a pool on the Pacific coast. And there I was, sitting by the pool, listening to someone say "I love you" with a thick accent, and realizing the world isn't black and white. It's painted in shades of loyalty, lust, lies, self-deception, and the aching desire to feel alive. Because in her eyes, there was no cruelty, no malice, only longing for something she didn't have at home. I went back to my chair, poured myself another beer, and stretched out under the sun. But one thought wouldn't leave my mind. If your wife, Susan, takes annual girls' trips to San Diego, buddy, you're a fool.
I was 48 and thought I had built a quiet, good life for myself. 2 grown kids, both done with high school and living on their own. A small 2-bedroom townhouse in Portland with ivy crawling up the fence, lavender by the porch, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of cinnamon and coffee. And there was Mark, my husband. We'd been married almost 30 years. Every morning I woke up before sunrise, brewed coffee in the old Mr. Coffee machine, packed Mark's lunch, turkey sandwiches with cheddar and an apple, and sent him off to work with a kiss on his cheek. Then I'd make oatmeal for myself, feed my cat, Milo, and sit by the window to read the news while the city slowly woke up. That January, he went on a ski trip to Mount Hood with some old college buddies. I folded his thermal shirts neatly, packed wool socks and the knit hat I'd made him back when we were first married. He kissed me quickly at the door. "See you Sunday, Lisa. Don't work too hard," he said, flashing that boyish grin. That weekend was rainy and gray. I lit candles, binge-watched old black and white movies, and baked blueberry muffins for when he returned. Saturday night he texted, "All good here. Beer and skiing. Miss you." I smiled, sending him a picture of Milo curled up in my lap. But when he came back Sunday night, he seemed different. He barely spoke, avoided my eyes. Slept in the guest room. All week he was distant. Came home late smelling like cigarettes and a woman's perfume I didn't recognize. Finally, I asked, "Mark, is everything okay?" "Yeah, fine," he said curtly, staring at the TV. Then one evening he turned it off, took a deep breath, and looked at me with tired, sad eyes. "Lisa, we need to talk." My heart sank. I waited. "I met someone on the trip. She's younger, fun, makes me feel alive again. You're a good wife, really. We've had a lot together. But I need something else now. I'm sorry." He talked for what felt like hours, about how exciting she was, how she made him feel 25 again. His words fell like heavy rain on a cold tin roof, relentless, chilling, loud. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He moved out a week later, taking only a suitcase and his old guitar. I watched him leave from the living room window, feeling numb, like my entire body had fallen asleep and couldn't wake up. Days passed in a fog. I barely ate. Coffee in the morning, maybe some crackers by night. I caught my reflection one afternoon. Hollow eyes, tangled hair in a messy bun, an oversized sweater hanging off my shoulders. At work, my colleagues at the clinic asked, "You okay, Lisa?" "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied with the same empty smile. Then came the day I had to look at apartments. We were splitting the money from the house sale. I walked into a small studio in downtown Portland, unshowered, no makeup, hair pulled back under a knit beanie. The real estate agent, a young woman named Brooke with a sleek ponytail and stylish boots, looked me up and down gently. "Divorce?" she asked softly. I nodded, and before I knew it, I was sobbing uncontrollably on her faux leather office chair. I hadn't cried like that in months. She handed me a tissue, waited for me to catch my breath, and said, "You're stronger than you think, Lisa." Afterwards, she took me for coffee at a tiny cafe that smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon rolls. She told me about her own life, her heartbreaks, her dreams. For the first time in almost a year, I felt something lift inside me. Weeks passed. I bought the studio apartment, painted the walls a warm sage green, hung up white linen curtains, bought myself a new pair of sneakers, ordered a second-hand bike from Craigslist, something I'd always wanted but never let myself buy. I wrote out a list in a spiral notebook, things I'd always wanted to do but never did. Take a pottery class, drive the Pacific Coast Highway alone, learn to make sourdough bread, join a book club. December came. One chilly evening, someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Mark standing there, holding a cheap bouquet of gas station roses and a box of Whitman's chocolates. "Lisa, I made a mistake. She's too much for me. I miss the quiet life with you. Can I come home?" I looked at him for a long moment, his shoulders slumped, his hair thinner than I remembered. Once my heart would have jumped at seeing him again, but now I felt nothing. "No, Mark, you made your choice, and I'm happy now." He nodded, eyes glistening, and turned away. Later, my sister called. "Lisa, family is sacred. Maybe you should forgive him." But I knew the truth. Family isn't just names on a marriage certificate. Family is where love lives, where your heart feels safe. Now, I wake up alone every morning, brew my coffee, watch the sunrise over the city from my window, Milo purring beside me. My kids visit on weekends. I read novels late into the night, take long walks along the river, bake bread that fills my apartment with the smell of home. I am Lisa, and I've finally found myself again.
I used to think infidelity was something that happened to other people. The weak ones, the irresponsible, those who had long stopped caring, people who didn't value their families. Not us, not me and Hannah. Things weren't perfect, no, but we were honest. We'd built something real over the years, raised 3 kids together. I believed that our slightly worn out but sturdy life was built on trust. I met Hannah in college. She studied literature. I was in mechanical engineering. We were a strange match, but it worked. We moved in fast, married even faster, and before we knew it, Noah was born. I was 23, she was 22. He came into this world frail, spending his first month in intensive care. For the next 2 years, we were in and out of hospitals. Hannah was his world. I took extra shifts, night jobs, anything to cover the bills. Then came the twins, Emily and Grace. It felt like everything was settling. No big dreams or beach house fantasies. Just an old Toyota I kept trying to fix, family movie nights, and the sound of the girls giggling in the living room. That was happiness to me. When Hannah told me she was pregnant with our 4th, I didn't flinch. I even smiled. It wasn't planned, sure, but I thought, we'll make it work, just like we always do. The baby was a boy. We named him Caleb. But right away, something felt off. Darker skin, deep brown eyes, a slightly almond shape to his lids. Not like me, not like Hannah. I joked, maybe he got it from my great-grandfather. There's a rumor he had Turkish roots. Hannah laughed too, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Months passed. Caleb grew. He laughed, babbled, crawled into our hearts. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling, as though a stranger had found a place in our home. I hated myself for it. I didn't tell anyone. Not even myself, not really. Until one night I stood over his crib watching him sleep, and this thought crept in. What if he's not mine? No, that's insane. Still, I got a DNA test. Quietly, anonymously. Then lived the next 2 weeks like a ghost. Fixing pipes, grocery runs, homework with the girls. Pretending everything was normal while something sharp scraped at my insides. The results came by email. I opened the file, confused at first by all the charts, markers, percentages. Then my eyes locked on a bold line. Probability of biological relationship, 0%. I stared, frozen. Then I laughed, a dry, cracked sound. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room, scream. But I didn't. I just sat there, in silence. For hours, maybe. I don't remember. That evening I confronted Hannah. The kids were asleep. I showed her the results. She didn't cry, didn't shout. She went pale, lips trembling, and said, I don't know how it happened. I'm sorry. Sorry. For what, stabbing me in the back? Feeding me lies? Letting me raise another man's child as my own? I waited for her to deny it, to name someone, to say it was a mistake, just one time. But nothing. Just that small, broken, I'm sorry. I didn't sleep that night. Just chain-smoked in the kitchen, watching a candle flicker beneath the family photo. In the morning, I drove to the garage and stayed there. Should I leave? Kick her out? But what about the kids? About Caleb? How do you tell a child you're not his father? I came home that evening. The kids didn't notice anything. Emily showed me a drawing, our family. Me, Hannah, the kids, Caleb included. At the top she'd written, "My family is my fortress." I almost wept. 2 weeks passed. I slept on the couch, talked to the kids, made dinner, did pickups and drop-offs. But Hannah and I, nothing. She didn't try to explain, didn't ask for forgiveness, just waited, like she knew it wasn't hers to ask. One evening, coming home from work, I saw a man leaving our building. He glanced at the apartment numbers. Normally I wouldn't have cared, but then Hannah ran out after him, her face panicked. The man muttered something, walked away. She stared after him like she was afraid he wouldn't come back. When she saw me standing there, she froze, pale again. I said nothing, just walked past. Later that night, she came to the kitchen, sat across from me, hands shaking. That was him, Caleb's real father. I wasn't even surprised, just stared into the table. She told me it happened 2 years ago, when I was away working on a contract upstate. Her mother was hospitalized. I barely called. Work was crazy. He was a friend from college. Showed up, offered help, stayed around. One thing led to another. Once, maybe more. She wasn't sure. I filed for divorce. No yelling, no drama. Just papers. Hannah didn't fight it. I packed a few things and moved out. The kids stayed with her for now. I still saw them every day. Even Caleb. He ran up to me, called me dad, and I couldn't bring myself to correct him. A month later, my father called. He didn't know what had happened. Asked how I was. I told him, divorced. There was silence. Then, because of her? I said yes. He sighed like he already knew. Then added, you did what you had to. But remember, being a father isn't just blood, it's heart. Caleb's still a kid. He didn't choose any of this. A few more months passed. Then came a letter. Hannah filed for child support for all 4 kids, including Caleb. I went to court. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, read through the documents. I handed her the DNA results. She paused. But he's legally your son. I was deceived, I said. I filed to contest paternity. Another round of bureaucracy. Psychologists. Evaluations. Meanwhile, Caleb got sick. Breathing issues. I visited him in the hospital. He was on 4th when he saw me. He cried and reached out. For the first time in months, I hugged him. Hannah stood in the corner, silent, hollow, like someone who'd aged a decade in a season. I didn't know what to feel. How do you erase a child you raised? 6 months passed. I rented a small apartment near the kids' school. Saw them almost daily, Caleb too. The court eventually ruled I wasn't liable for Caleb's support, but I could still visit, my request. Hannah moved in with her parents. We rarely spoke. The kids still saw her. I tried not to hate her. But forgiveness, I'm not there yet. You know, when a family falls apart, it feels like the world is ending. But then through the ashes and pain, you see, life goes on. Kids grow. The sun still rises. And even among the ruins, you can build something new. Not a castle, maybe, but a shelter, and a heart that still has room for warmth.